Hey, and welcome back to another video. And today's a special video because I was lucky enough to try out a new AI service platform called Vectorshift. Now, Vectorshift is a no-code AI service platform. What do I mean by that? You don't have to use any code, and you can build something like a simple chatbot in less than 30 seconds. It has an ecosystem to build, deploy, and manage your AI applications. And I know some of you are probably going to wonder, yes, you can have local open source LLMs. I'm going to show you what it is with examples. Let's get started. Go to vectorshift.ai. All you need to do is at the top, go to log in and create an account. Now, when you first open it up, you'll see something like this where it's going to ask you some questions. You can just say skip for now. Just give yourself a username, and now we're going to get started. All right, once you're logged in, you're going to see a screen similar to this, except if it's your first time, there's going to be a bunch of example, what are called pipelines that you can choose from. You can start editing and play around with right away. However, we're going to create our own. First, I just want to go over the sections we'll be going over with in this tutorial. If you come over to the left-hand side of the screen, there's a sidebar. We have pipelines, marketplace, storage, automations, chatbots, evaluations, and transformations. The main one that we're going to be working with is the pipelines. This is where we actually create something like a chatbot. And what we're going to do is on the top left-hand side of the screen, there is a big purple new button. Click that and then choose Create Pipeline. And you're going to then be greeted to a blank canvas. And this, we're going to be creating our first pipeline, which is going to be a simple chatbot. Now, on the top left-hand side of the screen, we have a bunch of sections and choices to choose from. Now, what are these? These are called nodes. And what we're going to do is just drag and drop these onto the screen and then connect them together to have a pipeline. And there's going to be 3 nodes that you're going to probably use more than any other. And we have the input, the output, and then under the LLM section, you can choose one of these as your model. So for a chatbot, we first are just gonna either you can just click this and you can see it puts a node onto the screen, or you can click, hold, and drag and drop it onto the screen. Either way works. And all this is this is some input, so we can put some text here. We want to send that to our model. Now let's choose our model. If you go up to the LLM section up here, we have OpenAI, Anthropic, Llama, Google, and open source. Now, I know you guys like open source, so let's just choose open source node. Again, you just click, drag and drop onto the screen, and here we are. Now, they have several Mistral models to choose from. They're going to keep updating this with other open source LLMs, but this is all we need for now. So I'm just going to choose the Mistral Instruct version 0.1. And as you can see here, we have an input for this node called prompt and an output called response. And the same thing for this input, we have an output called input. This is really just the field name here. So if I change this to be input, you see it changes here as well. Now the next thing is, whenever we send something to a model, it's going to give us something back. It's going to give us a response. So how do we capture that response? Well, if you come back to the top left of the screen under the general section, as I said, the third node that you're going to be using a lot of is the output node. So again, just drag and drop that here. And there we go. And the last thing is we just got to connect these nodes together. Now, first, for this input node, I just want this to be a simple chatbot. So I'm just going to copy and paste this in. And all I want the LLM to do, or the prompt, is just to say, I'm a simple chatbot, ask me anything. Now to connect them together, all we do is click this circle on the input node, drag and drop it to the prompt here, and it kind of auto connects whenever you're close to it. And then for the response, which is going to be the output from the LLM, we want to capture that. So we're going to drag and drop this over to the output node, and that's it. Now we just go ahead and run this. So at the top right of the screen, there is a run button. If you go ahead and click that and then click run, you see we have this output status. So the input, okay, that's good. And now this output status on the LLM is running. So it's kind of generating a response. And over here on the output, you can see it gave us a response. Now, I just gave it a simple input, so it could have really just gave me anything here. But the idea is that we created this so quickly. Then what we can do is we can, at the top right of the screen, there's a save button. So we can save this pipeline to use it for a later time. So if you just click save, all we need to do is give a pipeline name and a description. Okay, so we gave it a simple chatbot name and my chatbot as a description. You just click save. And once that's done, you can come up here and go back to your pipelines. And here we go. We have a simple chatbot. Now, what you can do from here is you can actually run this. You can run any of these from this screen without actually going into the chatbot. So if I choose run here, it gives me an input text in the output. It's waiting for the output from the LLM. So instead of the input that we had inside the pipeline, now I can say anything here. What is 2 plus 3? And then whenever I run this, it's then going to give me the output. All right, awesome. Now what we're going to do is going to create another pipeline, except we want it to generate an image and also save it. All right, so what do we want to do first? Well, we want to create a new pipeline. So come up here, click New, Create Pipeline. So now we're going to learn a couple other nodes. The first thing that we need is an input. This is going to be common, so just get used to this input node. And then if we go over to multimodal section, there's an image generation node. You just click, drag and drop here, and it gives you some default settings already, such as the DALL-E Model 2. That's fine. And then we need an output node. So I just drag and drop this here. But as I said, I want to save this file as well. Well, there's a different node called file save. So I can just drag and drop this onto the screen. And this takes in two inputs, right? It takes a name and it takes a file. So this means that it has to take some file type here. Well, let's just connect these together. So I drag and drop the input to the prompt. So there's some input here. Let's just say create an image of a cat on a stool. All right, so this could be now the prompt to the model. Then for the output, we want to save this, right? So this image is going to be a file type. So we want to save this as a file. And then you don't have to only connect this output to one. You can also connect this to other nodes. But if you see here, this output is gray. Now, why is that gray? Well, it means I can't use it right now in the state that it's currently in. And the reason is because this output is expecting a text. If you click this drop down, you can choose image or formatted text. Let's choose image. Now, if I try to drag and drop this, it allows me to. And I think this is great as a visual cue in case you're doing something wrong. And it says, hey, fix something here because this isn't going to quite work. Now, if you see in this file save, we have two parameters, right? Pass all files to download to files. Okay, so we have the files input. Now there's also a name input here. Name the file outputs using name. We'll use a default name if empty. So we don't have to put anything here, but I can show you another node while I'm here. So I'm just going to drag and drop this text node on here. And you can see here, there is a variable name with double brackets around it. And this means that I can bring something into this text node and then output it if I want to. I can now have multiple variables if I wanted to bring different nodes into here to create some text. We don't care about these right now. I only care about sending a simple text to the file save. So I can just say, let's call this cat file new. Okay, so this cat file new will be a part of the name for file save once I just drag and drop this over here. Okay, great. Now let's just run this and see what happens. So you click run and then choose run again. And again, look at the output statuses. Once you see check marks, you're good. So now the image generation model, it is trying to generate an image of a cat on a stool. That ran successfully. Now it's going to create it and also have the file save. So everything here worked correctly. What can we do with this file? Well, we can either download it here. See, there's a download button. Or again, we save this to a file. The first thing we want to do is just save this pipeline. Probably what I would always do. So save the pipeline. Okay, once you give it a name and description, choose save. And now I'm going to show you where to find these files. Now that we saved it, go back to all pipelines. On the sidebar on the left-hand side of the screen, remember I showed you there were other sections here? Well, go to storage. And then up here, there's something called vector stores and files. Well, if you choose files, and then we just need to refresh this sometimes. There we go. Cat file dash new. So this is the file that we just created from that pipeline. And here's an example of one that I created yesterday. So you just click the check mark here, click download, and then you can open it up and look at your awesome cat on a stool. Okay, great. So I've shown you how to create two simple pipelines, and it literally takes like seconds to create these. In some cases, depending on the model, it can take longer to run the model than it was to create the pipeline. Now let's go to something a little bit more in depth. Maybe we can have a model, give it more context, and then the chatbot can only respond to questions given a simple context. Well, now how do we give it this context? Well, we can create a vector store and then import data into that vector store multiple ways and then connect that vector store to a model. Let me show you how it's done. All right, so now we know where our files are at now that we create or download from a pipeline, but there was this other section here called vector stores. So click on vector stores, and here is where we create our vector store. There's a new button here. Let's just click that, then choose create vector store. Now we just need to give it a name and a description. I only want this vector store to get information about Roman history. So I click confirm. And then now we're greeted with this page. And as of now, there's nothing here. You see, it says no rows. But on the top right here, there's an add document. So click that. And then a loader type. This is how we want to load information into our vector store. So there's a bunch of ways here. We can upload files. You can integrate other different ways. You can get it from a URL, a Wikipedia, YouTube video, Git, there are multiple ways here, right? But we're going to choose Wikipedia. And now what do I want to query in Wikipedia to get pages from for more information? Well, just Roman history. I click add, and now what's going to happen is it's going to query pages in Wikipedia about Roman history. But as you see, there's nothing loaded here. What we need to do is just click this refresh button, and now all of a sudden we have 3 pages from Wikipedia about Roman history. We can then go to pipelines, and now we can create a new chatbot that's only going to talk about Roman history. So click new, create pipeline, and we're going to do the same thing we did in the beginning. You're going to have an input node. You're going to have an LLM. This time I'll use OpenAI, use 3.5 turbo model. And then we go back to general. We need an output. And then we need one more thing here, right? We need something that connects that vector store to the model. Well, there's a vector DB section up here. You can choose Vectorstore and then just simply drag and drop that here. Now, under this Vectorstore node, we can choose a vector store. So we're going to choose the Roman history store. Now we can start connecting nodes. We need to connect the input to the query input from the Vectorstore reader. And also we need to connect it to the prompt. But first, we not only want this input going to the prompt, but we also want the result from the vector store reader going in here. But we need another input, like this circle here. We need another input into the model. How do we do that? Well, just like this. I want to give a question to the model and I want to provide it context. So the question is going to be coming from the input and the context will be coming from the vector store. And you create that variable with these double brackets, and I can give any name in here, right? I can just say C and it changes the input to the node here. So now we're ready. Now we can take this input. This is going to be the question asked to the model, and then the results from the vector store is going to be the context for the model so it knows more about Roman history. Now, there's still a system prompt up here, right? And this is kind of like, how do I want the model to respond? Well, I only wanted to talk about Roman history. So what will I do? Well, if you go back to the general tab and then choose text, and I want this to be the system prompt. Well, I don't need a variable here, so I'm just going to erase this and I'm going to go ahead and just put in a prompt so it only talks about Roman history. And I just have it saying you are a Roman history teacher. I only want you responding to questions about that topic. If you don't get a question about that topic, then just respond with, I don't know, I am a Roman history teacher. Okay, great. So this is the system prompt. Now we just need to connect the response from the LLM to the output. And now we're ready to go, so we can go ahead and run this. But first we need a question. Let's say, well, I guess this isn't really a question, but I have it saying, give me a brief summary of Roman history. Now let's go and run this. Click run. And here we go. It has output, which looks like a brief summary based on the context it was given from those Wikipedia pages. Now let's try again. I want it to give me a brief history of something else, just a brief summary of the world. Now let's run it again and see what happens. And you see here, because of the prompt that I gave it, the system prompt, it's just going to respond with, I don't know, I'm a Roman history teacher. And that's what I wanted because I only want questions about Roman history. And now we just went ahead and saved the pipeline. Okay, great. We did something a little bit more complicated with a vector store to give the model more context. Now there's 2 more things that we can do with this. We can deploy it, meaning that on another computer, you can access the chatbot URL and start using it, and we can embed it into a website. Let's go over that really quick. All right, the first thing is let's deploy this. So if you go back to all the pipelines, and then over on the sidebar here, we can go to Chatbots, and this is where we're going to create our chatbot to deploy it. Right, so there's a button here called add, just choose add. And now let's give a name to this chatbot and description. Okay, we are Roman history teacher chatbot, and then there's also this pipeline configuration. We need to select the pipeline for this chatbot. So click this drop down and the Roman history pipeline. And the input is going to be the input 1 node, and the output is going to be the output 1 node. So you could rename those nodes inside the pipeline to help you out a little bit, but all we need to do now is just save this. And there's some other tabs over here. The first one we want to go over is the export. This is where we're actually deployed, and it's as simple as just clicking this deploy button. Now, you see we have a Vectorshift URL. If you just copy this, open up a new tab, paste this, and now it's going to have your chatbot. And this is just like what we did before, but now it's in its own URL, and you can use this from any computer. And I asked it to give me 3 names of leaders from Roman history, and it came back with the response. Okay, that's great, but what if we also wanted to embed this into a website? What if you have a WordPress website and you want to use this now as part of the functionality of your website? Well, if you come back to your chatbots here, there's this embed in website here. It says add the chatbot code snippet into your website. Click this drop down, and you have this iframe code. Again, you don't actually have to code anything. You can just copy this. Now I'm going to have a local Flask server running. I'm going to show you how I just copy this into the code. If you're using something like Wix or WordPress, it's going to be a lot simpler, and we'll see how it works. All I did was simply copy this iframe code into here. This is my Vectorshift chatbot. I started a Flask server. So if I go to this local host server, you can see this is my Flask API demo. I can now just start chatting with the chatbot again. And so I just asked it what 2 plus 2 is. Of course, it doesn't know that because it's only a Roman history teacher. It can only help you with that information. But we now know how to embed this into a website. All right, so I have a few more things to show you. I'm going to create one more pipeline at the end with an integration to show you what the integrations are. But let's go over these other tabs really quick. There is a marketplace tab, and what this is other people have uploaded their own templates or pipelines to this marketplace. And what you can do is you can either run it from here, and you can input a question, you'll get an output, or you can view it, and then you can see what they've done for their pipeline. And there are many examples here. There's also an automations, and what this does, if you create an automation, say you have a new file come into your drive, in your Google Drive, well, then you can do something based on that new file, and you can even automate some of your action items that you get from emails. There is the transformations, which this is how you can write custom Python code, such as this one I wrote. So I can edit this random here. So I gave it a name, a function name. I have it an input and output. And then if you click this next button, as you can see here, you can do something with this function. I just have it returning 5. So every time this gets called, it's going to return 5. Well, back in a pipeline, you can create a Python node and use this custom function to do something as part of the pipeline. And then we have evaluations. And I really like this one because allows us to test our chatbot. So if we go to new here, let's just go through an example. Then you choose create evaluation. Let's select the Roman history pipeline that we just created. So we're going to add that. And then what you can do here, you see there's test cases. We can add more test cases. I'm just going to choose 2 for now. Okay, so I have the first test case is to give you the name of 3 Roman history leaders, and the second test case is to tell me about the Ottoman Empire. Now, what should happen is whenever I run the first one, it will give me the leaders. If I run the second one, it should say I don't know. So what we can do here is you can either individually run these, or you can just play this whole scenario. And once that's done, the first one does give me 3 leaders, and the second one says, I don't know, I'm a Roman history teacher. And that's what I wanted. And what this is useful for is if your chatbot changes over time, all you have to do is come in here and run. Like, say you had 50 test cases, you can just run this whole scenario. It'll go through all these test cases. Say you update it every 2 weeks. We'll just run this every 2 weeks, and you can make sure that the outputs are correct. All right, great. So the last thing I want to do is create a pipeline where we integrate something. So let me just show you what that is. So go to pipelines. We're going to create new, then create pipeline. And the first thing we need is an input, and then we'll need an LLM. Let's choose OpenAI. We'll just use the 3.5 Turbo. And then, of course, we need the output. Now, there's this integrations tab here. So what is this? Well, you can take any of these applications, such as Gmail, Google Docs, Drive, HubSpot, Notion, and you can integrate this as part of the pipeline. I'm going to take HubSpot. So let's take HubSpot here. And what you need to do first is I already connected my HubSpot account here. You'll just need to connect your account. It took me only 20 to 30 seconds to do that. And then you have actions that you can take on your HubSpot account. So let's say I want to search for my contacts. Well, how do I do this? Well, first off, let's just connect all the nodes together. So we're going to take this input. This will be the query for HubSpot contacts. The output will be the prompt. And then the response from that will be given to the output. I'm going to change the field name to query so it makes a little more sense. And then the actual query is going to be me, so Tyler Reed YouTube Learning. Now, instead of actually giving another text field into the system, I can just put my own system prompt in here myself. So the system property I want is I just wanted to only get the email property from the contacts that is querying. And now let's go and run this. So if we click run and then run, as you can see the output status here, it finished and the output was just my email. And that's great. You can also integrate with things like Google Drive. So if I drag this down here, you can connect to your account, and then an action could be either to read files or save files to your drive. All right, so here are my final thoughts on Vectorshift. I think 2 things, right? I think the first thing is it is a great way to prototype something. I can actually create a simple chatbot in like 30 seconds with dragging and dropping. And secondly, if you aren't really a developer, or even if you are a developer like me, like I really enjoyed using this. If you're not a developer, then you don't have to worry about any code, right? Again, you just drag and drop nodes, connect them. Now, you had to write some prompts for the model or if you want to perform specific actions, but there's no code needed to do this. And as I showed you, you can deploy the chatbot and then use it in a website that you already have. Now, I also have codes for you that you can use in the description, right? So if you sign up, you'll be with the free version. Now, if you want to upgrade, use that code and you will get a discount. And I want you to let me know what you think about this, all right? Sign up, try it out with the free version. I think you only create one pipeline, but you can just delete it afterwards, right? It really, once you kind of get used to it, it doesn't take long at all to create one. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you have any questions, let me know and I'll help you. Have a great day and I'll see you next time.